And welcome to Inside Pitch. I'm St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist Lynn Worthy, along with Daniel Guerrero, beat writer for the Cardinals. Talking a little offseason baseball here. Daniel, first thing, let's dive into just, since the last time we sat down and talked, a lot has changed with the roster, whether it's non-tender deadline, a big trade that's taken place. For you, what stands out? What has been surprising or not surprising? What's your view of where the roster stands now as we're now into December?
Right. I mean, there has been some overturn. You look at, especially coming into the off season, right, where the Cardinals have some veterans that they're looking to trade with Sonny Gray and Nolan Arenado. They got one of those done by trading Sonny Gray to the Red Sox. They got Brandon Clark and Richard Fitz, a couple of pitching prospects back in the deal. You mentioned the non-tender deadline, and also, just kind of that Rule 40, or not Rule 40, the 40-man roster protection deadline for the Rule 5 draft. That all kind of uh, goes kind of hand in hand, right? Where you clear some spots. Uh, you remove Jorge Alcala from the roster. Yoel Pozo's another guy. Sam Robertson, who's was a trade acquisition in 2023 in the Jordan Hicks trade from the Blue Jays. Those are some of the guys who were removed from the 40-man. Zach Thompson's another one, right? Who was first round pick in 2019 and had kind of found a spot in the Cardinals bullpen, and they, try to uh, give him a shot at starting in the majors, and then, dealt with some injuries this last year. And then you look at the additions, right? You look at there are a couple guys who, you kind of automatically thought, okay, the Cardinals are going to protect him, like Leonardo Bernal, top catching prospect in the system, a Gold Glove winner at the minor league level. Joshua Baez, a second round pick in 2021, who had a breakout year and also, just kind of had this setting up the Cardinal system after a couple years of trying to figure things out. Cooper Jerpy's another one who uh, first round pick in 2022 who had Tommy John surgery this past spring, but also, has a lot of invested in him. So the Cardinals obviously make a move to protect him. And the last one being Bryson Motts, who really broke out onto the scene this year after some struggles the last couple of years in terms of 40-man roster spot and the Cardinals minor league pitcher of the year honors. So you kind of look at the makeup of this roster heading into the winter meetings next week, and you are seeing a younger roster, a roster that, is kind of preparing itself for the future. Some guys that I mentioned are pushing up against that major league bubble. Richard Fitz is one of them who has some major league experience. But there are guys who you expect to contribute. Might not be next year, but I mean, at least in the year after, right? Because some of them, like Baez, like Jerpy, like Bernal, like Motts, haven't had AAA experience yet. Um, but there are guys who, you kind of look at as pieces of the future and kind of what Chaim Bloom and the rest of his staff are building.
And of course, part of that roster getting younger, losing Sonny Gray, that's obviously the big move of the offseason so far. And that's the one that brought back, the two pitching prospects. And Fitz, who's pitched in the big leagues, looks like he's going to get a chance. If he's not already penciled into the rotation, he is at least, competing for it. Um, Another thing that we've had since the offseason is we got staffing. Ollie Marmol's staff has been sort of finalized, as well as some minor league stuff. Not a lot of surprises to me. How about you? Anything in there that jumps out as far as the staffing?
I think when you look at what they've done on the minor league side, right, the last year, the last offseason, right, there was this big overhaul, this influx of new staffers, especially at the coordinator level. There were some additional staff, additions at the affiliate level with bench coaches, which we hadn't seen in previous years, which were kind of like that fourth coach kind of role that I think they've had in years prior. But I mean, we hadn't really seen a bench coach in the last couple of seasons. But you look at this year, right, and they make additional hires at the coordinator level, hire director of hitting, and they just continue to bulk at the player development level, and that's something that if I remember, I mean, Chaim Bloom kind of touched on at his introductory press conference after the end of the season that that was kind of an area that they'd look into. I remember talking with Larry Day recently, the Cardinals farm director, and he mentioned that there's looking up and down the industry for people to bring into the organization. Um, And I think that this is something that when you look at the Cardinals farm system, uh, especially in this first couple years with Chaim Bloom, uh, making changes and kind of evaluating it, this is what you're seeing. You're seeing a investment in player development, and that starts with, uh, obviously the just the additional resources for coaching, and that was something that even looking back to last spring for. Uh, with kind of this first spring training with the new faces, just more staffers. I mean, you can kind of see the differences, right? There were coordinator roles that they hadn't had in previous years, and that they're still adding now. So I think that that's kind of what sticks out to me is that that these are long-term investments, right? That you're kind of laying the foundation for what the farm system, what they want it to look like, and how they want to, uh, handle player development and put these guys in a position to succeed.
Yeah, and I think at the additional staff at the minor league level is one of those things that we sort of anticipated looking at what, the changes that had taken place in the Red Sox farm system underneath Heim Bloom, and obviously with him coming over, you could sort of forecast some of that happening. But staying on that minor league side, minor league players of the year were announced. Obviously, JJ Weatherholt, who a lot of people are anticipating getting his chance in the big league. Some people were mad that he should have been up last year, and I'd written multiple times that I didn't really think that was the way to go. But him and Bryson Motts are obviously, the top players in the minor league system. People who will obviously have an eye on them next year and be looking to see what their status is in camp and at the end of camp. Um, haven't gotten a chance to talk to both of them. What stands out to you, or what I guess will you be wanting to see as we sort of get through the offseason, get into spring training from each of them?
I guess, I mean, for me, the thing to kind of watch with JJ Weatherholt isn't really what JJ is up to, but rather kind of what the Cardinals are able to do um, with their efforts to trade Nolan Arenado, right? I mean, if they're able to clear that spot, that obviously opens up a lane for JJ to um, compete at third base, to kind of push for that roster spot coming out of spring camp, which we expect him to be a non-roster invite. Um, he's had a little bit of time at third base as a pro after getting to Memphis. Played a good chunk of third base when he was at West Virginia University. But his versatility is an asset. I mean, that's something that he talked about after he was named minor league player of the year. That he wants to show that he's a good defender too. That uh, he's not a liability out in the field. That he can be relied on wherever he's placed, whether that's second, short, or third base. He's played mostly shortstop. Uh, Coming up in the minors, got some second base this year and then eventually third. But I think just seeing what the Cardinals do on that front, kind of paints a clearer picture of what we can kind of expect from JJ Weatherholt next spring. And then Bryson Motts, I mean, this is a guy who uh, just had a pretty rocky 2024 in Peoria. Got to go to the fall league and kind of figured some things out. Came into this year with some added fastball velocity, uh, kind of a better understanding, I'd say, of being able to use his breaking pitches, his breaking pitches and just being a more complete pitcher. And that's kind of what we saw in Springfield. I mean, he was one of the big pieces to a really strong starting staff down in Springfield, along with Eshawn Henderson, who was a Texas League Pitcher of the Year, and Pete Hansen, who led the Texas League in quality starts, but is actually goes into this upcoming Rule 5 draft unprotected. I mean, he was also part of that 2022 draft class with Bryson Motts and Cooper Jerpy. But when you look at Motts and you look at some of the openings in the Cardinals rotation and just kind of how he can fit in, I would expect him to get some good run in big league camp just to kind of familiarize himself with the staff, kind of get an idea of what it's like being around big leaguers. But I mean, because he hasn't pitched in AAA yet, I'd expect some seasoning there. That's something that Chaim Bloom kind of mentioned about player development and call-ups that, they'd kind of like for guys to get some extra seasoning and don't want them to be undercooked when they get to the majors. So I could kind of see that being a kind of a process for Bryson of just getting some time in Memphis to, to continue developing.
Yeah, and I think that right there is probably a good set up going into the winter meetings. I mean, you talk about, JJ Weatherholt's future may depend on some moves that get made here in the offseason, whether that's Nolan Arenado, Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar. It's all connected because there's some versatility, but there's also a trickle down effect, whether that means guys moving, getting more time in the outfield or moving around the infield. So that affects JJ Weatherholt. And then, like you said, with Bryson Motts, the fact that Heim Bloom has already signaled he's not going to rush guys just because they have openings. He'd rather them be ready and have other people fill in those spots in the big league level before they force other guys into those spots or their young guys into those spots. So that I think is a perfect transition into what's going to be coming ahead. The winter meetings will be taking place next week. And of course, we'll have plenty of coverage on STL Today in the pages of the Post Dispatch, social media, all of that. So make sure to follow along. For Daniel Guerrero, I am Lynn Worthy, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll talk to you throughout the offseason.